Good morning. It is 6:08 a.m. on Tuesday, March 7th, 2017. I'm Christiana Ellis and I still feel terrible. This is 5 more minutes. Um whatever this thing is that got me sick is just really throwing me for a loop. I feel like yesterday over the course of the day I felt a little better and then a little worse again and blah blah blah. I'm going to try to suck it up and go to work today because I got stuff to do. Um, but yeah, still not feeling great. mm but I'm going to go ahead and try to talk about Avatar Last Airbender episode today because I've been putting it off for too long. I've put this off for far too long. Um, so, the episode in question, Season 2, Episode 9? 8? God. Sorry, guys. In any case, I believe it's 8. The episode title is The Chase. And perhaps of all episodes, it's fitting that I would feel like this for this episode because the kids of Team Avatar are not at their best either. We basically have a plot that is, pretty straightforward. It's, can't get away. We're getting more and more exhausted and irritated with each other, that sort of thing. It reminds me of the very first episode of the, post miniseries Battlestar Galactica reboot 33. It reminds me of the pursuit from the man in the white hat from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. This idea of, how do they keep following us? And so, pretty standard plot for the episode, but it gives an opportunity. Like, we have our new team, but they're not really solidified yet, right? Toph has not been along with them for very long, and not only that, but she's really not used to being a team player, which is completely understandable given her upbringing, which is to spend half of her life pretending to be a helpless little girl and the other half going off on her own and doing dangerous things and not telling anybody. But so the idea that uh, she, that, Katara and Toph in particular have just very different ideas of what it means to be part of a team. Toph very, regularly, she repeatedly points out, it's like, I'm carrying my own weight. I'm carrying my own weight. The idea that as long as she never asks anybody else for help, she shouldn't have to do anything for them either. Versus Katara, who wants everybody to be doing everything together. And obviously, those of us watching it while not running for our lives could easily see how, well, okay, so maybe if you were able to talk that out reasonably, you could come up with a compromise. But the problem is that the kids are exhausted and they can't really talk about it reasonably because their nerves are on edge. Meanwhile, Aang is trying to play peacemaker and being frustrated because it's not working. And so we see his tension rising and rising as a result. And it's actually Sokka this time who's the level-headed one to a large extent, which is kind of fun. I mean, he's always, practical and all that, but, lots of times he's the one overreacting to things. But we get lots of fun new stuff with Toph. First of all, just the show really does not want us to forget that she's blind, and that's nice because lazy writing, we could imagine, would just, it's like, well, yeah, I guess technically she's blind, but you still have her facing people when they talk and that sort of thing. But no, Toph, doesn't even turn her head in that direction usually. Um, there's also this idea that she's, when she's riding on Appa, she doesn't, um, uh, she doesn't sense everything like she usually does, so she doesn't really like it. Uh, just midway apologies to everyone that this is probably going to be a less cogent analysis than usual. Oh, there's my dog in the background. Um, okay, so, but the kids are on the run because there's a strange machine, Fire Nation machine, obviously, chasing after them. And it takes us a couple of encounters with this thing before the kids are in one place long enough to discover that it is in fact Azula, Ty Lee, and Mai in this thing pursuing them. The fast, agile team that Azula put together. Seems pretty effective so far. Um, so I guess part of why I'm sort of instinctively feeling like the episode is not taking as much time to talk about, at least certainly with this early part, is just that a fair amount of screen time is spent just building that dynamic that I mentioned. So without getting into the ins and outs of every conversation they have, um, that's basically the idea, is that they're on the run. We get some. What's really one of the joys of this show is seeing competent good guys against competent bad guys, and just having them all be able to do cool stuff in interesting combinations. Especially having both of Azula's friends be non-benders, just as a reveal that, like Sokka, you don't have to be a bender to be skilled. Although Toph certainly uh, enjoys ribbing Sokka there, implying he's not like a full member of the team when considering the odds. So there's a lot of pursuit. There was some silliness early in the episode with Appa shedding and playing with the shed hair, which I related to as the owner of a dog who sheds a lot. Um, but that proves to be the way this machine is tracking them, is that it's able to see this trail of shed hair that Appa is leaving behind. So they come up with a fairly good plan to try to split the trail and lead them in the wrong way. And it's really only Azula being so smart and having her friends also be super smart and observant that allows them to detect that this is a false trail and essentially conclude exactly what happened. But it was still a good plan in the sense that it forces the pursuers to split up. I mean, I guess technically it forces our team to split up too. Okay, so technically the blow up where Toph stomps off into the woods is just before that. So the arguments escalate to the point where she just decides to leave, and again, it's like some, you know, the idea that she would run into Iroh, that Zuko would show up later. We could say, oh well, that seems like a big coincidence, and yeah, okay, maybe kinda, but it's less of a coincidence with Zuko because with Iroh we establish, oh, Iroh happens to be in the area, but we also know he's following Zuko, which makes us feel warm inside, but also tells us Zuko is probably in the area too. And this machine that Azula's driving around in makes enough noise that he might be able to, follow. Or be aware something's happening anyway. And so it's we have Aang lead the trail off, and then I don't know about you guys watching the episode, but it didn't occur to me from his first plan that he intended to just wait at the end of the trail for her to show up. But I think we could chalk that up to his frustration and fatigue, um, just not wanting to run anymore. But that also just ties into his own bravery and desire to try to end this if it can be. But Azula is a deadly adversary. And so we see more of Katara and Sokka versus Mai and Ty Lee. And it's a good fight. And I like that we get a little preview of the episode's resolution when it looks as though Katara and Sokka have been defeated, but um, uh, but then it's Appa that blasts Mai and Ty Lee into the river, um, temporarily rendering them unable to pursue. It's good stuff. I mean, there's good fighting. Mai's darts, very effective. And then Ty Lee's chi blocking, although I don't remember if they've called it that in the show so far. I feel like the last time she used it, I didn't mention it during this rewatch thing, but part of that is that I don't know. This is an element of the show that I'm familiar with from um, having watched already and watched the sequel series Legend of Korra, and so some elements I forget are new when they show up for the first time. But in any case, we also get back over at Aang and Azula, and Azula is just cool. I mean, obviously she's terrifying and evil, but she's just such a cool character. I think she's very interesting. And so there's a confrontation with Aang and Azula, but then, oh my gosh, Zuko shows up. We have awesome three-way fight um, with Aang and Zuko and Azula that eventually sort of starts becoming Zuko plus Aang against Azula, and she's still holding their own and winning. And it's still looking bad for our heroes until even um, Katara and Sokka and Appa show up, and Toph shows up, and then Iroh shows up, and it goes along with this idea, this lovely little tea conversation that Toph and Iroh had when they were off on their own. This idea that it, you know, accepting help from your friends is not a weakness. It's not a weakness. And that actually just reminds me of the theme of the Lego Batman movie, wherein the Batman of that story, it's not that he can't stop the bad guys on his own. It's that he doesn't have to. His life can be improved if he lets people help him. And so this is the theme that, Iroh is hoping Zuko will learn. He hopes that Toph will learn. And that is emphasized when we see first just how tough Azula is, but then also the idea that, Aang's got friends. He doesn't have to do it alone. And so that's pretty great. But of course, the heartbreak of the end of this episode is that it's a little hard to tell exactly from the animation because it's very quick. But in making her escape, Azula appears to at least critically wound Iroh, and then use that their distraction to escape. And it's awful because Iroh's the best, right? I mean, come on. So um, it's we're worried for Iroh, and then also it's the tragedy that Zuko is not ready to learn that lesson yet because Katara's right there. She has healing magic, healing waterbending, dude. She's right there. She offers to help. So the warm feelings we had about seeing everybody team up against Azula kind of fade again because Zuko's not ready to accept help from anybody. So even though his uncle is perhaps dying there in front of him and he's distraught, he still tells them to leave instead of helping. And it's terrible. Okay, so I think that's probably all I got for this episode. It was very exciting. There's some great action choreography, as is the norm for this show. But also such an elegant telling of this lesson of it being a strength, not a weakness, to have friends. And to have multiple characters at different stages of the process of learning that lesson and able to take different information from it as a result. Because, I mean, even Azula brought her friends on board rather than try to do it by herself. So, we will see how that theme develops over the course of the rest of the series. And I will talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.